Hey folks, I'm super excited to share with you all a full quilting tutorial this afternoon. That's right, we're going to be using the Super 60 template set to create the Cosmic Charlie Quilt. Are you ready? Let's get started. Well, welcome back everybody to yet another wonderful tutorial here at Stitchin Heaven's YouTube channel. I'm super blessed to see all of you on the other side of the camera. And yes, we're gonna dive in today and we're gonna make this awesome quilt. And it's super simple to make because you're just making a few different units, but you will definitely need the Super 60 template set. And you can pick that up here at Stitchin Heaven. The link is right in the description below. And hey, while you're there, you might as well hit the subscribe button because I know you're gonna love today's video. Make sure to leave a comment and like the video. That helps the channel grow as always. And so today, let me think of what I can ask all of you. Oh, I know. How many of you already have the Super 60 template set? And what kind of other quilts have you been experimenting with? You can always send your photos to me, rob@stitchinheaven.com, so I can see what you've been working on in your studio. But until then, let's dive in, like I said. Now, there is a pattern, but if you watch the video closely, you actually don't necessarily need the pattern, but you definitely need the template set. So if you have to make a single investment, go with the template set. I'll walk you through the pattern. If you would like to get the pattern, of course, you get all the instructions plus the cutting chart on the back. So this cutting chart on the back is going to refer to the different size number or the different number of the size pieces we need for each of our three characters, Jerry, Bobby, and Phil. Those are the names of the templates just for easy reference. And so as we dive in right now, let's look at the quilt itself to kind of give you a bit of what's going on. Now, when you saw me down at Island Batik hanging out with Caleb at the warehouse, I came home with these terrific Island Batik solids. And I know that they look like they're just standard prints, but check this out, maybe even in the overhead camera. There is no mottling or no that tie-dye kind of style dye, but it's on the really wonderful high thread count, the prepared for batiking kinds of thread count. So these are basically reorderable. The dye lots are a lot more secure, so we can keep getting more and more of these colors. And because we're working on a pretty heavy curve today and a bit of bias, I always recommend that you use the best quality fabric possible. And I love batiks because they're just more dense. So that's going to really help us in our curve, not distort our project much. So yes, we are using Island Batiks. These are the solids. I think they come in about 12 different colors, so you certainly don't have to follow my palette. But like I said, they are just beautiful. Now, as we dive into the project, I'm going to talk you through how you make your star, and it actually uses three parts of the Bobby template, 1, 2, and 3. And the stars, whether it's the orange and black or the blue and black, they're made the same exact way. So again, it's going to be a very simple construction. You're going to make 6 of these blue-black stars. You'll make 1 of the orange and black stars, and then the rest of it is going to be really fill-in using the Jerry and the Phil pieces to create these fun orange polka dots. And these are not applique, folks. These are actually stitched in, as I'll show you here in a few moments. And the similar exact design, just in a different colorway here. And then all the way out to the edges are just simple, solid triangles. So one of the things within this project, I'm going to use all my templates for it, but also if you like maybe a Creative Grids triangle, 60-degree triangle ruler, those also work really nice for cutting these solid triangles. So at any rate, let's, like I said, dive into the construction. And I do want to start with the stars. I'm going to show you how to lay out one of the units for a star, but remember, you're going to need 6 units to make the complete star. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these that will look just like this. As I started to say, the blue star units and the orange star units are made exactly the same, meaning that your light blue and your black are in the same position. So technically you could start by chain piecing all of those together. And this is the way I make this. I like to lay just 2 pieces together, right sides together if you're not using batiks. And now we're just going to stitch all the way through this line. This is going to be what I call a aggressive Y seam. We're not even really doing a Y seam. It's going to be a straight seam. I've got my presser foot let me stop here. I have an extra wide presser foot, but I've moved my needle all the way over. So it is at a 1/4 inch from this outside edge. I also have a dual feed system involved on this Bernina, and I really want that because it's going to help me keep all of the fabric tracking at the same pace. So the wider foot gives me the opportunity to use all of the feed teeth of my feed dogs, and that's why I've gone out here, but I can still move my needle position. So I also have the zigzag plate in today. So again, we're going to do a straight stitch, 1/4 inch seam all the way to that bottom, all the way through here. And I'm actually going to sew right off of the fabric. So if you were utilizing these pieces in chain piecing format, then I would just keep laying the black down, the blue, just like you see. And I should have really pointed out, but as you start to sew, folks, you are going to start by sewing on the short edges, not these long edges, okay? So when you're laying that out, you're looking to match up your short edges. And you'll make 6 matching units or 36 of the blue so that you have the 6 stars you need in the back. But we're just going to make 1 right now. So I'm just going to hit my thread cutter. And now what I like to do as I come over here is I'm going to always press, regardless of what color we're using, I'm always going to press over to this left piece so that as I sew down, I'm coming down the hump of the seam allowance. Hopefully that makes sense. Now I even left my long ruler over here to remind all of us that at first we were cutting strips so that we can really mass produce these pieces. So the bobby unit that we're using right now, that's the 1/3 of a triangle template. Now that one you're going to need 3 1/4 inch strips so that you can cut these out. On the fill unit you need a 4 1/4 inch strip. And then on your Jerry triangle, you're going to need an 8 1/2 inch strip to make those as you go nice and efficient. Okay, so now that I've gone ahead, and like I said, I was pressing to the downhill, the black side of the fabric, and now as I get ready to line this up, I'm just going to go ahead and place my 3rd piece, my add-in piece. This will be the orange or maybe the dark blue. And now I'm going to sew down here, but what I want to do is I want to pivot at where the seams have already crossed. So one of the tricks I've learned, thank you Kevin, I thought this was a great trick, is once the fabrics are completely lined up, I'm going to come up in here about the first, I don't know, 2 inches or so, and I'm putting a heavy finger crease right there. So now I'm going to know right where to position my needle when I pivot, and this is the easiest way, I think, to do this style of stitching. So I'm coming on down, I have my needle down engaged, I'm looking for that intersection. You'll be able to see it basically lines right up, and now as I drift in there and I can see that my needle just landed in that crease. And if you can't land in the crease, you're better to go a stitch further. If you stop a stitch too soon, it might make a bigger pucker in the middle of this unit. So I've gone ahead and hit it just about perfect. And so I'm going to leave my needle down, but I'm going to raise my presser foot so I can pivot and rotate. And what I then do is I line up the tippy tips down here first. That's my first move. The second move is I pull the excess out. And then I make sure that I haven't created any kind of little chicken beak or anything that's going to poke through on the front side there. And then I'm just going to go ahead and lower that up. And again, matching up the 1/4 inch seam allowance, I'm going to stitch to the end of this row here. Or the end of these units, I should say. Now the first set of stitching we pressed over to that left side. Now I really do generally just press them both into the new color. So these seams here are going to actually press into the orange. So we're doing this much more based on construction management today than we are doing this based on color management. And that's because this is what's going to make our triangles stitch together beautifully. Okay, and so with that being said, give you a moment to observe. It's not perfect every time. As a matter of fact, I'm generally not perfect anytime, but they're pretty dang close with this method. I've also seen a couple of other methods where folks will actually sew always from the tip down and meet in the corner. That works nicely, but it's just a little less efficient, but I do like it as well if you're a little bit more of a perfectionist than I am. So at any rate, once again, you're going to make 6 of this color family, rotating it just to show, and you're going to make 36, so 6 here, and then 36 for this. And I just want to point out now, once again, every single thing is made the same, or every single unit is made the same, right? So all of these match up. That way, when we get ready to put them on the design wall. Now we're not going to stitch anything together until all of our rows are complete, because we are dealing with triangles and you'll get yourself into a terrible Y-seam situation. So eventually we are going to sew these rows, but not until we know where everything goes. But I do want to show you how these come together, and basically on this section I'm going to find my light blue for the outside, and over here I would be finding my dark blue for the outside. So let's use that. And now as it rotates around, let's see, dark blue on the outside, that's what I'm trying to do there. Okay, you can start to see already the way that the star is going to form, creating that with the light blues and the black fabrics here. Okay, and again, the dark blues around the outside, just like that. And as I was just starting to say, if I want to at least build the units so they're easier to put onto the design wall, I simply can sew this line and this line together, but I may not sew this. So let me show you how that's going to work while we're still talking about the stars. Again, I really want to just go ahead and flip over right sides together, and I'm not going to worry about these dog ears yet. They are going to get bulky eventually, and we are going to need to trim them out of the way, but right now we're just going to be joining the seams. And remember, you're sewing onto the black and the light blue, so as long as you're not putting thread through the dark blue right now, you are okay. Just going to line these up, come on over to the presser foot. Don't need to change that presser foot out because I'm still using a 1/4 inch. And I really like all of that fabric on the feed system. And I might just, because we have some bias, I don't want to over encourage anything, but I certainly can line things up to make them beautiful. And then I'll sew all the way through there. Okay, now as this comes out of the machine, you can see it's making a really nice seam. This is where you may choose to start to press these seams open for bulk management. You notice I was only pressing to one side as I was building those units up, but I also am going to start to get a lot of this bulk in here, and I really do just take a pair of scissors and I trim this out as I start to work. And I'm trimming it down pretty close because I really know that I'm going to be making some more seams in a few minutes that all come together there. And I also like to press after each seam. Now I'm not going to take the time to press the seams open, but I don't discourage any of you from doing that. It would be the same thing now if I wanted to add on. You just need to make sure you're keeping your orientation appropriate. Remember, those dark blues go to the outside. And again, I would just flop this over, match these up now, and go ahead and introduce them to the 1/4 inch seam allowance. So again, a pin, painter's tape, bubble gum, whatever you need to do, except for sewing the rows together. Just your half rows or your parts of your units here as you build them out, and keep trimming and replacing the confetti onto the floor there and pressing as we go. And I think it's about time we move into the jerry and fill units. It's not as complicated as it may look, but it is something you're going to want to slow down for a little bit. Okay, so let's just go ahead and stack these now here so that I can keep track of them. And that's exactly what I would do, is I would build, as a reminder, 6 of the blue stars and the 1 of the orange star, and set those aside. And now these are the units we're going to work on, folks. These are what I call the jerry and the fill. That's the name of the shapes. And as you can see in the orange polka dots here, you're going to use 2 of them to create that shape. Real simple, real easy, okay? And when you go ahead and cut out your templates, you're gonna be cutting 2 separate pieces because there is a seam allowance built into this. So I just want to point out the part that has come from here is smaller than this part. So make sure you don't try to put the small half circles back in, right? We need the one that is larger so that the sewing will marry them together. And again, as you can probably see, I've just kept most of my piles organized across the table. So the color units you're going to need to make, and the instructions will tell you how, but again, you need to make the light blue and the orange for these polka dots here, right? And I believe there's 14 of them. 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then it duplicates. So yes, there is 14 of those. Now around your star in the center is where we're going to use this light blue and dark blue that I'll show you how to sew in a second. So those you'll need 6. And then this one with the black and the dark blue is what borders each of the stars. So you'll need 36 of those. So again, a fairly simple pattern to follow. But let's go ahead and get these up and out of the way, so I can show you how to stitch this, and then I'll also talk to you about those full and half triangles at the end. Now as I approach my machine, I really want the half square triangle laying flat on the feed dogs. I called it a half square triangle. It's a half circle, and that's why we named that thing fill, because it fills in the space there. And then this is going to go opposite. This is going to lay like this, right? So folks, if you've never sewn curves together, when you sew straight lines, they are laying on top of each other, but curves have to come back together, so they're laying opposites each other. So I do have a bit of a 1/4 inch right here. It's a 1/4 inch. And then I also have about 1 1/4 inch along here. So line up both of those edges to start, and start right down in that tip. And we're just going to ease these together. So any of my garment friends that are coming from the garment world, you're going to love this. Let me drop that foot, and you can see again, I have the fabric on the very edge, but I'm doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And folks, until you get pretty smooth at this, I don't recommend you backstitch, because if you don't get it right, you are going to need to go back and unstitch it and rebuild it, because it's going to look better if you do. Now, as I'm going, what I really want to be looking at is that my fabrics kind of lay flat, and I do put a little extra pressure to slow down my lower fabric. This first section is really the trickiest, so just keep your needle down, and you're just watching the outside edge of the foot. I'm not really worrying. It looks like there's a pucker building right there, but it's not puckering under the needle. You see how I was able to flatten that down? So I'm just looking to make sure. And folks, it'll take you 3 of these or so until you get really good at them. But just ease that in. As long as both layers of fabric look semi-flat without pucker, you're really going to do pretty good. I've seen techniques where folks will glue this if they really want precision with a water-soluble glue and then wash it out. I'm cool with that. I've also seen folks start in the middle and go both directions, but for me that's a little more challenging, because then I'm not having that lower piece like I want it on the feed system. So as I come in here, see, this looks like I now have a ripple forming, and I will if I stitch that down. So I'm going to put the foot up, leaving the needle down, and I'm going to correct that right underneath that foot, and then I'm going to put the foot back down so that I don't lose my needle's position. And now it's nice and smooth again. I'm already halfway there, and this is where I start to evaluate, am I going to make it or not? Am I going to make it or not? And I'm coming around, and it's actually looking pretty good again. Let's just take one more fabric adjustment. Okay, I like the way that's looking. And back down here, great. So you can see the fabric's laying nice and smooth. We're gonna come around here and try to line that last little corner up again if you can, honoring that 1/4 inch. Sometimes it wants to pull out to a side, so I'll grab a stiletto or a scissor or something and try to hold it nice and secure. And remember that that last stitch is going to form right there, like that. Okay, so now I bring it off, and I'm double checking to make sure that I'm pretty dang close. And pretty dang close is within 1/4 inch, folks, because I've given you a little extra you could trim. If your Jerry piece goes long, you can trim it. If your Bobby piece goes long a little bit, you can trim it. But if it goes more than 1/4, I am going to ask you to unstitch and try again. Like I said, you will get better and better at these the more you practice, and your machine and my machine may function differently, so just take it nice and slow and use that needle down to just kind of keep everything in position and location. Once they're done, I actually prefer coming back through, and I'm going to snip the fabrics in the seam about every 1.5 inches or so as I go around. Try not to cut your threads. If you catch a thread or two, you'll be able to re-secure it while you're quilting. It's okay. But I've snipped those now, and now I'm going to press all of that up into the Jerry triangle itself. So as we come on over here, we're going to go ahead and fill these in like this and just press it over. All right, folks, and so then again, that is the very basic construction for the Jerry and the fill. And so you need for this goes right here, again, 6 of those and 36 of the ones that are in the black combination. So that's how you construct the units and the pieces. Everything is symmetrically laid out, with this being the very center point of the quilt running straight through. So I think you can pick up the layout off the diagram if you choose not to get the pattern, but I think you probably will pick up the pattern as well. We just need to address this fill in, this blank space out here, and these are what I refer to as a full triangle or a full Jerry. You can see it was cut here right off of the template. As long as you don't cut this out, it's going to be that perfect 60 degree, and no matter what, what size, they always kind of match up, which is great. This is why I love 60-degree triangles so much. So now, in the space way over in the corners where the quilt ends, we're going to need half units of these, or these half triangles. So let's make a couple at once. You can see I'll stack them up. Now what I'm going to do, of course I could iron them in half and just cut them with a rotary cutter, but that's a couple of steps. So there is a center line on all of the templates. So what I do now is I'm going to take this center line and I'm going to lay it on the outside edge of one of the triangle sides. But remember, folks, it's a triangle, so where I slide this will actually affect how accurate that center cut is. So I truly am going to just kind of use my eye, straight edge of the template there on that edge. And now what I'm going to do is, as I go ahead and cut through, I'm just going to let that rotary cutter keep on going up through that tip. And you can see it's not exact. I could have been paying a little bit more attention and cheated over just a little, but still, they're going to be the half triangles, and these will be used in this format here, and they'll be dropped in like this. And again, all of the construction is just like I was showing you when it came down to the building of the actual stars. But let me show you how to put in one of these as well, because sometimes, and I like to start on the very beginning of my row. Let me make sure I just have one of each. So again, they're going to lay like this, and you'll notice that I've got the corners cut, and that makes life pretty dang easy. So now I can just line those straight edges up. And if you didn't have a straight edge, and it's probably kind of hard to see with the two matching fabrics, but you can always line up your bottom edge down here. Just don't forget where you're stitching. So now we're going to come over here, 1/4 inch again, drop that in. And I always like to sew all the way off the edge when possible. So technically this could be chain piece, except for you're making your rows now. And so there's not a really good way to chain piece without getting confused of where things go. So thread cut, come on back to your pressing station. Press that over, really either direction that you would like. Okay? Just like this. And then you could start building in any of your Jerry or your Bobby units just as they are by flipping here. Again, lining up those tips and lining up the bottom edge, and so on and so on, and SEW, so on, right? Exactly. So that's it. That is Cosmic Charlie, and it is super simple, and it also makes a really fun game board. More information on that later. Let's talk about the quilting real quick, and then I'll let you folks get busy in your studios. Starting in the middle, or if I was on the long arm, which is how I did this one, I've got some live feeds for that. If you're not watching Friday afternoons now, we're doing live feeds on the long arms. It's real fun. Or I guess on Free Motion. But basically, I didn't want to distract the visuals of the quilt. So it's just straight line quilting, echo quilting, stitch in the ditch style quilting. And then I went to town using a gray to light gray variegated thread in the background and all of the gray fabrics. So actually it feels nice and loose in the center, nice and dense out around the edges, and it kind of plays with your eye that way a bit within the quilting. So I'm very, very proud of this quilt. Like I said, we have patterns available, we have kits available, we are having a blast here at Stitchin Heaven with all of these wonderful new projects for all of you. As a reminder, in the comments below, or if you'd like to send me photos, rob@stitchinheaven.com. In the comments below, I'd like to know how many of you already have the Super 60 template set, and if you do, what would you like me to make next for you? What kind of ideas are you thinking? These make some really fun dimensional quilts, but I've also something a little whimsical up my sleeve as well. So at any way, folks, you wouldn't know it, but it sounds like I actually need a cup of coffee, even though I'm going 10 million miles an hour. It's great to see you. I get so excited each and every week creating these wonderful tutorials for you. Share them with your friends, and please stay well. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. It really helps support our channel. If you haven't subscribed, do so now. Hit the little button to be notified every time we go live or do a new video for all of you. And here's one from the past I think you'll really enjoy.